Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP, and we're going to be going through a C.S. Joseph video, the latest that he did 2 weeks ago. I know that a lot of people watch C.S. Joseph's content, and even my dear friend Vonal Pete watches him religiously. And yeah, I wanted to do a critique on his last video, and I wanted to start with the things that I do not agree with in his video, and then I'll talk about a little bit of how he could be have a little sliver of truth in what he says, which is what attracts many people to him. However, how it's, drenched in a lot of nuance that I will give and provide, because C.S. Joseph does not provide any nuance. He's a very black and white thinker. Now, a lot of people follow him that follow me. Please reconsider following him. Don't reconsider following me. Because obviously I'm a power-hungry INFP, so I need all of the followers I can get. It is all part of my big, great plan, you see. So, C.S. Joseph and I are very similar in the way that we ramble on for a very long time, talking about MBTI jargon, and then we rarely come to a great point at the end. However, I think that C.S. Joseph is a little bit worse at that than me, because there is no point to his latest video. He does not give any practical advice of what to do. He doesn't really give any tips for INFPs of what to do about this power hunger he says that we have. The video is about ESTJs and INFPs and how we are secretly power hungry. And I don't know if ESTJs are as secretive about it, but okay. This isn't the first time that he's had this take. He's had this take several times throughout the years. I think some INFP X hurt him, and since then he has a grudge against INFPs and then also against INFJs. Those are the two types that I see him pick on the most. I think that it's also because it gets him a lot of views, because a lot of people don't talk about the bad sides of INFPs and INFJs, because most of the MBTI community is INFP and INFJ. I think that originally his channel had some good points, but he has devolved into his own view of the world, which is very dark, very bleak, very close-minded. And so he will say these things that are supposed to be tough love, which I could have accepted on its own if it was true and if he argumented his case in a good way. However, he really doesn't. Another thing that he does is that he uses pretty strong language. Like, he says that people are disgusting, like INFPs are disgusting, or they're ridiculous and foolish. He'll say these words to make him seem like the tough guy, when really, he's quite an insecure guy. Now, he has his setup. He talks for an hour, really bad audio. I'm not bragging when I say that I have better audio than C.S. Joseph, because I'm really literally just using my phone. So I don't know how he manages to get such bad audio. And yet a lot of people are willing to listen to him and his channel. But me, as a power-hungry INFP, I'm not getting any power. I'm not getting any followers. And I'm not really bitter about that. But I should be, according to C.S. Joseph, because I'm a power-hungry INFP. Now, he says that INFPs treat their friends like slaves, which I haven't noticed, but I guess I should check that in myself. My friends have not said that to me, but who knows? It's not my intention, at least. Also, he says that all of our life, 24/7, revolves around power, that we're always seeking power every single day. which is absolutely not where my thoughts go. I think that it's him projecting what he thinks and feels. He talks about how INFPs feel powerless, so they want power. But I think that it's secretly him who's feeling powerless and he wants power. And that's why he has his channel, which has a cult following. He talks about how power is not freedom, but power is the possibility of being able to change your situation at whatever time, which is kind of what I think of freedom as. But that's just me nitpicking the semantics of different words. It's kind of funny how he views the humble versus prideful thing. He thinks that humble people are celebrated in our society, while people who are power hungry are tarred and feathered, as he says, which is basically humiliated. I don't think that we live in such a world today. Unfortunately, humble people are often just stepped on, and people who are power hungry often gets the power. This reverse kind of idea is not really the reality that we live in. But sure, okay, let's say that INFPs had a lust for power and that they needed to hide it so that they seemed like a humble person, because that would, that would be good for their reputation. I don't think the INFPs are really searching for power, but okay. He doesn't really give any solutions about what to do about this. He talks about how, the powerlessness thing. If you do this, which is basically, he gives tips about how to maintain your power by being a conductor of power rather than hoarding power and containing it. He says if you do this, if you are more like a person who delegates power to others, then you will never have these feelings of powerlessness again, which I think is a very non-INFP way of seeing things, because I think INFPs are very aware of that feelings are just feelings, and feelings of powerlessness does not mean that you should gain more power, like over others. I think INFPs, if they have this power lust, let's just say, if they have these feelings of powerlessness, and if that would lead to power lust, then I think that they would realize sooner or later that having power over others is not the same as having power over ourselves and our own lives. And I think that this is where C.S. Joseph misses a whole part of the psychology of the INFP, is that we need to feel confident in ourselves, in our own power over our own lives, rather than about having power over others. I don't think that any INFP, healthy or unhealthy, is really into this power lust of seeking power over others, unless they are extremely insecure and have, they've strayed so far off the INFP path. I think most INFPs will rather work on themselves and work on, self-empowerment, rather than working on gaining power in the external world in order to stop the feelings of powerlessness. I think the feelings of powerlessness are just that, they're just feelings, it's not. And also it's kind of funny because he talks about how the deadly sin of the INFP is sloth, which I would agree. If I had to choose a deadly sin, it would be sloth, because I am a procrastinator. However, I don't see how that sloth is helping me in my suspected search for power. I don't really understand that. And he talks about how you need a mix of initiative and sloth in order to maintain a position of power. And that really makes no sense. And I don't know why an INFP would want to maintain their power over others. So I think that C.S. Joseph has it kind of the wrong way around. That's not at all how most INFPs who end up in positions of power often are in that position reluctantly. They're like a reluctant leader, but they have to saddle on this responsibility, because I think the INFP is just, we're not completely harmless creatures. We have our flaws, and some of it is that we often kind of shy away from responsibility, because commitment and stuff is kind of difficult for some of us. I think that also we often don't have the self-confidence to lead, and we don't want to. We're SC blind, so we're not really into having an impact on the world. So we kind of feel like lost in what our role is in the world. So I don't think that we really are, lusting for power every day and working towards that. That is not how things work. He uses the words like disgusting, foolish, ridiculous, and you can tell that he just really does not like INFPs. He says how INFPs are hypocritical and how that's disgusting. Well, he's also hypocritical because he talks about other people, but like he doesn't see those traits in himself. So yeah. He talks about how he talks about how INFPs always went to cite their sources, and then that INFPs in the end went to become the source. However, I don't see how that really works out, because on one hand you're saying that INFPs are looking to positions of authority too much, and on the other you're saying that they want to be in the position of authority and not want to rely on these authorities. And you can't really have both. Maybe he's talking about this in terms of a progression. The INFPs progress from wanting to have to cite all these sources, and then in the end they become the source. However, I don't see how that is good or bad or anything really. His sources are not great. Like, he has the Rational Male, which is really red pill stuff. I mean, I've just looked at the summary, so I haven't read the book, but C.S. Joseph in general is kind of part of the manosphere, alpha male kind of, or not alpha, maybe sigma male kind of stuff, which isn't really my realm, so I'm not really going to go into that. He didn't really go too much into that in that video, so we'll stick to that video. He talks about how his definition of leadership is giving power to others, which isn't the definition that I got during my leadership course. My leadership course said, that I've gone for my medical school, is that it's the power to affect other people. However, okay, let's go with his definition. Well, I don't understand what would be wrong with that. Because then he says, well, INFPs gain power by delegating it to others. And isn't that good? Isn't that like being a good leader? I don't see the problem in that. And you'll see this a lot in C.S. Joseph videos, where he'll say something and then he'll say something entirely different, and there'll be no coherence to what he's saying. And it's like, okay, so do you want me to be a leader, or do you want me not to be a leader? How should I be a leader? You're not answering any of those questions. So I don't see how you could want to be a source but want to reference others all the time, because yes, INFPs do reference people and books and things, that information that they've read, articles. That is a part of our SI, is wanting to refer to SITE, wanting to refer to authority. It is a thing. So I give him credit for that. It is true. However, you know, being the source, nowadays it's not really, in my mind, it's not really possible to be the one and only source of things. Everything builds on other things, you know, and I think that's how INFPs view the world in general, is that we see how everything builds on everything else, and you can't be the one sole source. So is he criticizing the idea of what to be a sole source? I don't know. Anyway, he has some pretty wacky ideas. He talks about how INFPs are credulous and believe everything that their doctors say, which, as a doctor, I will say, I have patients that are all sorts of personality types, and I have people who believe everything the doctor says, and I have people who disbelieve everything that their doctor, me, says. So I don't think the INFPs are less likely or more likely to believe their doctors. I think that INFPs have an independent streak that would want to not want to listen to their doctor at times. And also he's spreading misinformation and saying that cholesterol does not lead to heart attacks, which is, you know, I don't need to use my authority as a doctor to tell you that that is wrong in basic physiology of the heart and of the blood vessels. But yes, okay, so I am a power-hungry INFP who will use her position of traditional authority over you and say that I'm a doctor, and actually that's not how things work. Okay, so yes, there are certain parts of things that, of what he's saying, that are true. That's the best, like, that's the reason why he gets this following, is because everything that he's saying is not completely a lie. There is some certain truth to certain things that he's saying. However, he twists it in such a way that it makes it completely wrong. Anyway, so there is that. And then he says that INFPs are treacherous because they're only loyal to what can give them more power, which is absolutely not true. I mean, in my friendships and in my relationships, I don't care about power. And I mean, I guess it's easy for me to say, and it's harder for me to prove, because like, how can I prove that I'm not seeking power, you know? I think that the only way to accept that idea is by having a kind view of the world. And I think that C.S. Joseph does not have a kind view of the world. He kind of sees people as very black and white, very dark view of the world. He has been through a lot of shit, and he is an extremely traumatized person. Not going to psychoanalyze, but I'm just saying what I've found out from my research. You know, I've had to watch several videos of his to come to these conclusions. But the fact is that his dad was an ENFJ who was a part of a cult, a pastor in this cult, and he himself was part of the cult, and then he got married and had a child. Then he proceeded to give an MBTI type to his unborn child, which is quite a wacky story in itself. But then he left the cult, and he was emotionally abused as a child, maybe abused in other ways as well, I'm not sure. But he was abused by his parents, but also by the cult. And he has been homeless, and he's lived a tough life, you know. So I understand that he has some insecurities, but he is projecting these insecurities onto other people, namely INFPs and INFJs, and not really doing self-reflection himself, you know. So that is my critique of C.S. Joseph. Oh, another thing is that he talks about how the receiver of a text has more power than the person who sends it, which is like a really weird way to view texting. Like, texting is supposed to be about, I find as an INFP that my relationships are about collaboration rather than competition. And it's not about power, it's not a power exchange. It's an exchange of ideas, an exchange of love. And I think that C.S. Joseph does not understand that. I think that he does not really understand how human relationships can be good and wholesome. And he views everything as just a power struggle. So I think that he's the one who is seeking power and not the INFPs. Now, so he has some truth in what he's saying. Oh, another thing that kind of contradicts what he says is that he says the presidents are often INFPs, which really, like, name me one INFP president. Like, I'm waiting. He hasn't named a single INFP president. So I have a hard time, believing that. Anyway, so there is some truth to, okay, INFPs maybe are not as harmless as most people seem to think. We're not just cute and innocent and, we do have our flaws. However, we're not on a constant quest for power. He talks about how INFPs are always searching for credentials to give them more power and authority, which, okay, I guess that I am kind of guilty of that because I am a doctor. So I have gone through 10 years in order to get to the holy grail of a medical school degree. But the point wasn't to gain power over others. The point was so that I could help people. And I know that maybe C.S. Joseph and his fans don't really see the world in sunshine and rainbows the same way that I do, but I do think that I am helping people, and that is very satisfying. And I'm not pushing people into, making decisions that they don't want. When I'm talking to nurses and patients, I'm in collaboration with them. So I'm listening to their ideas, and I have my ideas, and we work together towards a solution. I don't think that I'm like doing all of this so that I can get power and recognition. Though recognition can be nice, it can be nice to know that, I've handled this acute situation well by being a true leader and inspiring people and, delegating things to people and all that. However, that isn't what I look forward to every day at work, or that I've read thread that's through my life. I just happened to want to become a doctor because I wanted to help people and because I was interested in the human body. And it happened to put me in a place of authority because I have the most expertise in that subject. But the point wasn't for me to rise the ranks and become the most powerful person on earth, I'm not there like rubbing my hands in secret and being like, oh, I want so much power. If everybody else knew about this, they would hate me. Like, no. I mean, I think it's kind of healthy to have goals and ambitions for yourself. However, those goals don't really need to pass by amount of power. I think that a lot of INFPs are happy being in the shadows, not needing to take all of this responsibility, being behind the scenes. It is part of our interaction styles to be behind the scenes, not like other types. If you look at the Linda Barron's model, at least, there are certain types that are more into a leadership position of chart the course, INTJs and that kind of type. And then there are the extroverts. They have other types of leadership. However, INFPs are very content at being behind the scenes and not really in the spotlight, not being the person who make all these decisions. INFPs hate making decisions. It's one of their flaws, is that they cannot make a decision quickly and decisively. It's very difficult for them, and that's a skill that they need to learn. So if you're going to critique INFPs, like, critique them on the right things that are actual flaws of actual INFPs, and don't just rely on that one ex that you had a terrible relationship with, okay? Because INFPs, yes, we have flaws. We might harm people. We're not like completely immune to being problematic. And there are certain famous INFPs who have gotten power and who have misused their power. I'm thinking, for example, of J.K. Rowling. She rose the ranks, and from being, very, very poor and almost being on the streets as a single mom, she ended up becoming like one of the richest people in England, and very famous and very influential. And then she starts, spewing out this bigoted rhetoric about trans people, for example. And she seems very content to be in that position of power, and does not give, she hasn't given a lot to charity. She does give to charity as a part of like showing her reputation, I guess. So there is, a tendency maybe for certain INFPs to end up there. But it's not a defining feature of the INFP. And I think that for J.K. Rowling, at least, I think that at the start it was not. I think that power corrupts everybody. And I think that, if you're given a bit too much power and you haven't done enough self-reflection, then that might corrupt you regardless of type. And I think that at first, J.K. Rowling, for example, was not looking for power. She was just looking to write a children's book so that she could feed her child, I think we also have other famous INFPs who have gotten power. We have Hayao Miyazaki. He has done these really beautiful animation films. However, he has really high expectations for the studio, and so therefore he has really hard time with letting the quality of the films deteriorate. And he has had high expectations that his son would take over, and his son is not as good at animation, and so he hasn't been a really good dad to his son because of his high expectations, and because he has this position of authority and power over his son. So it hasn't really gone on that well in his family relationships because of this. And so I think that there's also this whole cult, this whole myth around Hayao Miyazaki being like the god of animation. But I don't think that was the reason that he rose to power, and he wasn't power hungry in the first place. And I don't think they ever really became power hungry. I think that all he wanted was, he wanted to make the films, and he really wanted to give the best quality of films for his audience. And if that meant terrorizing everybody at the studio, then so be it. So he wasn't like, it wasn't the power hunger that was the problem here. The problem here was rather his too high expectations and his terrorizing work schedule. I think that was more the problem. And also his, it was other things that led to the problems. It wasn't the power hunger in itself. I don't think that he was power hungry. I mean, I can't put myself into his head, but I'm just saying, so the powerful INFPs, the few who become powerful, it's not because of the power hunger that's, it wasn't that power hunger that was affecting their whole lives. it was other flaws, it was other things that made them into problematic people, you know. So I think that INFPs are not power hungry. I think that we might be kind of attracted to people who are in power. We might kind of, you know, because of our TE, we might want to be in a position where we are recognized as authority figure. However, I think in most cases we would rather be in we would not want to be in the limelight. We would rather be on the sidelines or behind the scenes. And I think that is not just us being humble, it's rather because we just dislike the leadership positions. We would rather do our own thing and explore our own world, you know. And I think that that's where C.S. Joseph really misunderstands INFPs. And I think that, I don't want to watch a C.S. Joseph video again, but I did it this time because I felt that a lot of people watch his videos that watch mine as well, and I want you to know that it's not true, and that this channel is not a positive influence on your life. C.S. Joseph's channel is not showing you the truth of what it is to be each type. He might have certain kernels of truth, but it's not worth going through a whole hour-long video to maybe get one kernel of truth that's interspersed by, 20 things that are untrue or just hateful. So that's all I had to say for today. Tell me what you guys think. Please don't, please keep it civilized in the comments. Like, I'm not saying that C.S. Joseph is a terrible person. I'm just saying that he is insecure and kind of projects his very narrow view of the world in his videos, and he's not really self-aware enough to understand what he is doing. And I think that it's dangerous if such a person ends up having too much power, because it is kind of hurting people's self-esteem and hurting people who are part of his near circle. I think that he needs to, step away from YouTube and maybe, figure out his own life. If he can apply his logical process to, his own life and building his relationships with other people, rather than tearing everybody down, then maybe he could return as like a more positive influence over the MBTI community. But as it stands now, I don't think that he's capable of that. So that's all I had to say for today. Have a great day. Bye.